The next thing I say is we are passing this debt on to the next generation. At which point I go to the stairs, pick up Lucia, and say, let's balance the budget and leave a better world for our kids. And the ad ends with Lucia sitting, waving, bye-bye, and basically she's saying, till we meet again, and we will. So we tell the story in pictures, but I mean, this is where we are. At best, we are passing this debt on to our kids. It's actually worse than that. So, some facts on the debt. And I think you know that the debt now surpasses our gross domestic product. That happened on August 3rd, 2011. You maybe know that the interest on our debt now consumes 20% of all the dollars collected by the federal government. 20% is money down a rat hole, folks. And if you pay as much taxes as I do, I don't think that's going to put a happy smile on your face. Given this trend, we are 3 years away from interest on the debt exceeding all our spending on national defense. Now, one of the reasons that's significant is because the United States of America federal government was formed for the purpose of national defense. All right? That was the purpose. That is the purpose of the Constitution, to hold together a country capable of defending itself, national defense. And so when interest on your debt exceeds what you're spending for the purpose of the country, obviously you've got problems. And one of the ways I like to put it is that this debt, and by the way, as you can see, I mean, there's no end in sight. Look at the trend. If you're an investor like I am, right, the trend is your friend. Here, the trend is not our friend. Look at the trend. We have the Bilderbergers involved. Anyway, we see the trend. We're 5 years away from where Greece is in terms of debt to asset ratio. No, I didn't come to be here to be a prophet of doom because I want to go to what we need to do. But I want to add that Neil and Jolene were gracious to meet us at the McDonald's at the edge of town. One thing I have in common with Bill Clinton is I can't drive by a McDonald's. I have to have a hamburger. It's the only thing. I've now exhausted the list of what I have in common with Bill Clinton. But there's this, the news, Fox News was on at McDonald's, and I had heard also on the radio that we now have 3 major cities in California that are declaring bankruptcy. Okay? The last one is Stockton. And just consider now, you've got city council people running the city, the mayor running the city, who have been presiding over a city government that has run itself into bankruptcy. I mean, this is banana republic stuff, right? This can't happen in the United States of America, right? It is. And what happened to Stockton, California is well underway, ladies and gentlemen, in the United States. And so we need to recognize the seriousness of what we are facing. I just want to add to that the footnote. If you read Mark Stein, as I happen to, writes for National Review, Mark Stein returned from Australia about 2 months ago, and Mark Stein said, the Australians are convinced, and this is business leaders, government leaders, and the like, Australians are convinced that the United States is headed for financial collapse. According to Mark Stein, I have not known Mark Stein to be wrong yet. Mark Stein says the business leaders and the political leaders in Australia are planning for the future under the assumption that the United States of America will financially collapse. And that is part of the mix in terms of how they are planning. Now, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to conclude that. So I also like to ask, you take the direction of this chart, and I like to ask, what if this debt chart described the organization? It could be a civic group, it could be a church, it could be a business, it could be state government. What if this debt described the organization that you are part of the board of control presiding over? Okay? How many of you would say, I think we'll just keep doing what we're doing? You know, I ask that all the time, and your response is typical. No one's raised their hand yet. You look at that, we'll just keep doing what we're doing? I don't think so. So part of our task, Julie, myself, all of you who have helped us, and many of you have, is to put this decision before the voters of the 1st District. Look at the chart and ask yourself, okay, you're the Board of Control, folks. How many of you think we should keep doing what we're doing? And I don't think there are going to be many people who are going to say yes. And we're going to say, don't you think it's time for a major change of direction? And we think most people are going to say, absolutely. Now let me show you quickly a couple more charts. This chart is the national debt adjusted for inflation, constant $2,000. And it looks a little different, but the basic picture is the same, adjusted for inflation. But I want to call to your attention, you can't see this from where you are, but I can. This chart only goes to 2008. If you add the last 4 years, 2009 to 2012, the debt line exceeds the top of the chart by 12 inches. So imagine the line on this chart going up off the chart that much. And one of the reasons I like to imagine that picture is because when we start doing the variations of our TV ad, we will describe the difference between my position and that of Congressman Tim Walz. Because Congressman Tim Walz says the way you deal with the debt is for the federal government to spend even more. Now I'm just going to have a moment of silence so that can sink in. That is his position. That is his position. Okay? And I am not, and I don't distort anybody's position. This is his position. The way to deal with this is for the federal government to spend more. And my response to that is, what fantasy planet are you living on? This is not just a difference of opinion. I mean, we're talking about the real world versus a make-believe world that the left has chosen to live in. So we're going to contrast his answer to the debt crisis versus mine. And let me go right to what my answer is. Now, I mean, we absolutely have to balance the budget. I insist we have to balance the budget in 5 years or less. I insist there has to be a deadline. And one of the reasons for that is, as a teacher, and I'm known as a politician, but I'm really a teacher. A lot of you know that. As a teacher, I know what happens when you don't have deadlines. Okay, imagine me talking to one of my classes saying, well, you know, I'm asking you, assigning you to do a paper on this and that. And that's all I say. You know what the students are going to ask? They're going to ask, well, when is it due? So I say, well, you know, when the time seems right for you. How many papers am I going to get? Or let's suppose the IRS, and don't get me wrong, I'm no lover of the IRS, but let's suppose the IRS said, no, April 15th, you know, that's history. Just send in your taxes when the time is right. Actually, that's not a bad idea, is it, John? Yeah. But you know and I know the IRS isn't going to collect any taxes without a deadline. There has to be a deadline. So what do we have to do? We have to set a top limit in terms of how much we can spend every year. And so for 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, we have to set a top limit before we look at any bills. And this is, Bob knows better than I, this is essentially how the state legislature works. I mean, this is just, this is the only thing that makes sense. And it works. And so you set a limit. The limit has to mean that we balance the budget after 5 years. We have to have an economic development program so the economy can grow at the same time, and we can do that. But you have to set the limit. And we cannot be doing business the way it's being done now, where a bill is being taken by itself, and then every special interest group comes and says, I need this, and I need this, and I need this. Before we consider any spending bills, we set the limit.